Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing the large Gypsy backpack version. It's so big I don't even fit in the camera screen. But I love this bag. It's got the cinched top with the grommets. We've got a zipper in the seam here. We've got a zipper on the inside. You could obviously add more if you wanted to. I didn't do a loop strap. You can obviously add that if you want to. But yeah, so if you'd like to see how to make this bag, stay tuned. Alright guys, so let's get started. I have already done the straps. So I did half and half straps, like I always do. And I've attached the connector just so the video doesn't run for, ever. So I've done both of those for the shoulder straps, which I do in all my videos anyway. So it's exactly the same process. So now I'm going to start with the main panels. So I'm going to take one exterior and one lining and one vinyl accent and then stitch them together. Now I'm using a blue contrasting fabric because I kind of want the stitches to pop a little bit. Just keep in mind when you're doing things like that, that your stitches have to be very, very precise. So stitch this and then back stitch. Grab the next one. So we're just putting right sides together and I'm going to chain stitch all of them and then top stitch all of them. Cut that one off, pop it aside, just so you guys can see. Normally I would just have all of these joined together and then cut them off at the end, but I fear that that might hit the camera and we don't want that. The outside I have interfaced with my hefty interfacing, which is a heavy iron-on non-woven. Also, a similar brand is Formfuse 1600. You could make it thicker because it is a bag. You could also add foam if you wanted like super structure. The other bonus of doing foam on the inside of the backpack is you can iron the lining to the back side of your foam. You could also add fleece if you just want like a little bit of extra cushioning. Okay, so now that I've done all of those, I'm going to crank up my stitch length so it's more decorative. I am all the way up to 4 today, and I'm going to fold this down so that I'm going to stitch onto my seam allowance here, and I'm going to top stitch. Now, all my top stitching is 1/8 of an inch. If you're new to top stitching and you're worried, you could do 1/4 of an inch. You could do 2 lines if you wanted to, do 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. I am going to back stitch at the start and the finish of all of these. And you might notice my foot is a different color. It's actually clear. I'm trying out a new foot because my Teflon foot officially died the other day. Now the reason I sew them all in this manner is it's actually quicker. And I'm all about efficiency. I have a lot to do today. I'm hopefully going to finish writing my next pattern. Which would be lovely. I've also got sewing lessons today for people too. Alright, I'm going to trim off these tails so that they don't annoy me, because they will. You should always trim as you go. I can see another one I have to do out of the corner of my eye, which is this one here. And so I've got a little table next to me. I find that having a table off the table is actually really helpful when sewing, because it means my immediate space doesn't constantly get crowded. It's very hard to sew in a crowded workspace. So I've got like a little table on wheels, which is actually for a laptop that I got at Aldi, which is super helpful. All right, so I want to pick my least favorite back piece because we're not really going to see it. So I like that one. I don't like this one the most. Not that I dislike it, but it's just got the least going on. So that's going to be what I use for my back panel. So I'm going to take, we now need our vinyl accent bits, and I'm going to flip them all over and put double-sided tape. So 2 of these are strap connectors and 1 is the piece, the larger one goes over the straps. There's like a strap anchor piece. I can't remember what I called it right now, having a mental blank. And then I'm just going to snip in between them like that, and they're all done. Don't need that one just yet, but while I was doing the double-sided tape, I may as well get it done. So we're going to peel off the backing, fold both sides into the center. Hey, Knuckles. He's a bit sad. He keeps staring out the window. So I'm folding both sides into the center like this. Now, I always rub mine on the edge of the table, and it just helps to crease it so it won't pop open, because this is not the most high-grade double-sided tape. Doesn't bother me. It's just, you know, sometimes it can pop off. So by rubbing it on the edge of the table, you're extra creasing it, which means it's less likely to do that. So now I'm going to grab my 2 square rings, and I'm going to measure 1 inch down and fold that over, and then I use 2 clips to put it in place. 1 and 2, and I'm going to need 1 more for the second one. Now, if you've got ones that have a join, I always put the join in here so that we're never going to see it. It's not a big deal, it's just like a minor detail, but it is something that I consciously do. Alright, we're going to use this ruler today because I think my other ones are over there from where I was cutting. So we're just going to measure in. And then I'm going to line up where these need to go and clip them down with more clips. You could also draw a line if you wanted to. So I would use a Chaco pen and draw a line for this. And you just want to have them so that they're even at the bottom. And then again, more clips like that. So from the bottom, I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to do 2 stitches and back stitch, and then I'm going to stitch up the edge. Now I'm sewing 1/8 of an inch from the edge of my strap. And then needle down, foot up, pivot. I've got to move my skulls out the way so that I don't spill my clips. And then we're going to sew across the top, and again needle down and pivot down, and then sew to the end and back stitch. Pull that out and trim the tails. So we're going to repeat that process for this one. And the reason we use 2 clips at the bottom is so that it can't pivot around and then become uneven, which is obviously something we don't want. Needle down, pivot, and then back stitch. Awesome. So now we've got a backpack strap anchors on. We need to grab our straps that I made off camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it wrong sides facing up and thread down through the bottom and then up through the strap adjuster. You want to pull it a fair way through so that we've got a lot to play with. All right, like that. And I'm going to grab the other one and do the same thing. So upside down, thread down, and then that way your accent sits on the top. Like that. The reason I've made them long is because now we have to like adjust some stuff up here. So I'm going to grab a ruler and my friction pen. These you can get at like Kohl's or supermarkets in general, or wherever you want. Officeworks sell them. You can buy them in packs. I don't love the red one. There's no real reason. I just don't think it marks as well as the others. So I tend to not want to use it. So now I'm just going to lift this up so it lays flat, and I'm going to tuck it under and stitch it down. So this is going to pop out the top. And I'm just going to stitch it just past the line, like so, and just going to hold it in place temporarily. And then we're going to get this one, we're going to do the same. So we're going to go up, tuck it under, go just past the line so then we can stitch it down. I actually plan on making this bag for my child for Halloween. Whatever costume he picks, I'm going to try and make the bag match in with it. And this will be his Halloween lolly counting bag or collecting bag. Alright, so now we need the strap accent. I can't remember what I called it. I have it a mental blank. This bit's going to go over the straps so that we can't see that. And it's going to look pretty. If you wanted to, you could also add a hanging strap in the middle here. I didn't do that because I figure you can just hang it from the handle because of the kind of bag it is. That was my choice. Now I'm going to take this and we're going to lay it over there. Now I've deliberately made it a square so the edges will hang over a little bit. But that was a conscious choice because I think it was easier than trying to cut an angled piece. It's much simpler to just chop off that little bit of excess at the end. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape on the back just to hold it in place because I'm going to find that easier. So I'm just going to lay it directly over there like that, and it's going to hide our strap ends. And then I'm going to stitch across the top. And then instead of tying off, I'm just going to sew down in line with the edge of the fabric because it's quicker than backstitching, tying it off, and then starting again. And then I'm going to backstitch when I get to this end, like so. So then when you flip it over, you've just got this little bit. So we're going to cut that off. If you cut it from the back, you can line it up perfectly with the fabric without any issues. Like that. And so now we've got a backpack back piece. So I'm going to take 2 of these and we're going to go and do the front and a side. So pick whichever one you want to be your front. I think I want this one to be my front. And then pick which side you want your zipper on. So I like mine on the right, but I've noticed a lot of people like doing it on the left. It doesn't matter. You can pick either. We're going to need a ruler and a pen again. And I'm going to mark like this. Then I want my pocket to sit about here. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to come down to here and mark this side. All of these markings are in the pattern, just if you're wondering. I don't just make you guess, I promise. Right, and so now I am going to sew from this line. Oh no, wait. I did the line wrong. It's too thick. Sorry, I was thinking of a different pattern. Ignore me. We need half that. Like so. There we go. Right. So I'm going to start at the accent. You can also start from the top if you wanted to. And we're just going to stitch, back stitch. We need to be on a joining stitch length. And then when we get to here, we're going to stop and back stitch. And then we're going to come up to the top and do the same thing. So we're going to stitch, back stitch, like so. Missed 3 times just then. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to take this and fold it over. Oh look, I missed. This is what happens when you don't clip things. So a fun way to unpick is I don't actually unpick. I don't even own a quick unpick in this house. I threw them all out. So I clip every third or fourth stitch, and then if you pull the back stitch at any point, it just pulls out, which I love. Okay, so let's try that again. I'm going to try it from the top. Right, that's better. So I'm going to fold it back. Now you may want to iron this back. We're going to do it to both sides, so that when we open this, it's all going to be folded for us, and that's where our zip goes, in here. So you can even lay it down like this and just fold and press. I'm just going to finger press, but you could definitely use an iron and get it super, super flat. Okay. So now I'm going to take these and some zipper tape, of which I hadn't picked the colour yet. Maybe orange, just for something really different. There is a little bit of orangeness to the fabric, so I think orange would actually look quite nice. It's not a true red, this fabric, so I don't know if, even though I'm doing a red pocket, you don't have to do a red zip. Switch it up, that'd be different. Okay, so I'm going to chop 2 of these, because I've got 2 pockets to do, just while I've got it out, and then I'm going to wrap it up and put it back, because it's good to tidy as you go. And I forgot to grab my zippers. So we're going to just singe the end of this, all the ends, so that it doesn't fray and carry on. Different brands tend to fray differently. I also find, even though I buy all my zips from the same person, different colours fray differently, which I thought was a bit odd. I'm assuming it's something to do with the dye. Nope, that's not working. I can hear it. So I put in half the zip, and then I put the other half in. Oh, there's someone at my door. My toasty. Alright, so I've put the zippers on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these. Now, they're squares, so just think about your pattern and which way you need them to be. And I'm going to stitch it to the edge. Like that. Trim off the tails. And I'm going to grab the second piece. And again, so I've got lining right sides up, zipper right sides up, and I'm going to stitch at that. Now I'm stitching close to the edge of the zipper tape because we still need to stitch this into the bag. And I will actually be changing feet to my zipper foot so I can get nice and close. And I've got a container of feet here with all my needles and stuff. Just need my zipper foot. I have seen people talk about you can get this thing that you push, like it's high density spring loaded thing to change my feet, but I don't think I need it. I don't really change feet that often, so it's not a huge deal when I do. Alright, so I'm just going to finger press this as flat as I can as well, and I want the zipper pointing up, so it closes in the up position. And then I'm just going to, I can put it sideways because that's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull the zipper through so I can see it. And then I just want to line my pocket up over the zip. That's pretty much all I'm doing. If you wanted to, you could put some thin double-sided tape so it holds it in place for you. I don't need that, so I won't be doing it. And then I can just drag it all over, and we're going to start at the bottom of the zip, and I'm going to backstitch. Sorry, bottom of the hole, not bottom of the actual zip. And then I am going to make sure that my teeth are lined up in the center, so that half the teeth should be covered by this. And then we're going to zip down, stitch over the top, just past the closing, and then down the other side. Zip her up, continue down, and then when we get back to the start, we just backstitch. And that's it. I'm going to flip it over and trim off all of these tails that I can see. Like that. Now, depending on which way you want your pocket to go, I want this to be my front, so I'm going to put my pocket over this way, like so. And then I'm going to start at one side and stitch down, across, and up the other side. But before I stitch that, I just want to chop off the excess so that they're even. Otherwise, we'll be stitching nothing. And I can switch back. That's literally all I needed my zipper foot for, because I wanted to get nice and close to that zipper so that I'm catching the fabric that I turned under, because there's only a little bit there. And it's a good way to help make the zip invisible. You could also use a size 3 zip. I'm used to using size 5 because it's what I've got handy. Put my foot down, back stitch, down the side, needle down, pivot, and then I'm going to fold this over a different way so I can get across the bottom. Needle down, pivot, pull it back, stitch up, and your zipper pocket is now closed. So now that we've finished all the zipper and we've trimmed all these tails, we can go ahead and finish sewing this bottom part. The reason we didn't do it earlier is because it would have been way too hard to get all of that zipper done while also fighting that bottom half, because it wouldn't have been flat. It won't sit flat once we stitch there. So you want to do it after you've installed your zipper pocket, because it just makes life easier, I promise. Just shredded my thread then. I'm not sure how I did that really, but I did. Alright, so we're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch, and then we're going to stitch up to our other stitching, and I've just run out of bobbin thread. Awesome. Alright, hold on while I do another one. Fresh bobbin, freshly oiled bobbin case, because if you've watched any of my videos, I tell you every time you do a bobbin, oil your bobbin case. And yes, there is a video on where to put the oil. You just got to scroll back because it was a while ago now. Okay, so I've stitched that. Now I need to start adding the other pieces. So if this one is the front, then the back needs to attach to this one here. So we're going to grab our back piece and line it up. Now, this is where you might really want to consider start using some wonder clips. So I'm going to line up that accent, add a clip, line up the edge and add a clip. And then if you want to, you can put some in the middle. I'm just going to put 2. Because there's no foam, I'm not really fighting the fabric as much. There's not as much resistance. Alright. So I've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clips. Do as many or as few as you want. You can even not clip it if that's what's going to work for you. Alright, so now when we get to here, you want to go onto the accent and then pivot and then come down and then backstitch. Because what we're going to do is we're going to trim all this off soon. But I'm going to do it once I've joined everything together. So now I've got front, side, back, and then we're going to add the other side. And we're just going to stitch them all together. So start here, stitch, back stitch. I'm going to come down to the vinyl accent and then pivot and back stitch there. So now we've got this weird looking kind of line. We're going to loop it round and close it up. So again, clip, clip, did it again. Come on, don't mess with me. I managed to stitch through the middle of the thread that time. All right, let's try that again. So line it all up. You want to go slowly over this bit if you're on a domestic, because there is 2 layers of vinyl added into your bulk that you've already accumulated. Needle down, pivot, and then back stitch at the end. So that's your outside made, almost. Almost. I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut the bulk at any start, end, and pivot point of all 4 sections. So I'm just going to move the bag around. You want to cut this off so that you get it nice and pointy. If you leave the excess there, it's not going to sit as wonderfully as if you chopped it off. So I'm going to chop it off. I'm just making a big mess, but that's okay. I've actually set it up so that my bin is directly at the end of the table, so I can just push it off the table and it falls into the bin. Took me a while to think of that, sadly enough, but it does work. Base piece. Now, if you want to, you could add bag feet, because the large size is quite large, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to line this up so it's centered on one of the pieces. Right sides together. That's not centered. It's a little bit more one way than the other. Now, you can sew it any way you like. I'm going to sew it from this way just so you can see what's going on. So we're going to start from the seam and we're going to stitch. Really? Again? What is going on today? We're going to start from the seam and then we're going to stitch all the way to the other seam. So the base piece is technically a little bit bigger than that, but that's so that we can turn corners and stuff nicely. Alright. Get to the other seam, back stitch, pull it out. And then I'm going to trim that tail, it's annoying me. And I'm going to do the opposite side. So again, line it up in the center. Now, it doesn't matter where you started, but you want to do one side, then the opposite, and then you're just going to pick a side and then do the opposite. That's pretty much all we're doing. So again, I'm going to squish it down, needle in, there. Since backstitch doesn't like me, I'm going to do my alternate backstitch method where I lift it up and go back through the first hole. There is a video on that as well. And then back stitch. Trim the tails. I know this seems like a lot of work to do opposite and opposite, but it's just going to help your base sit better. Because now we're going to take some scissors and we're going to clip up to the stitches that we just did. And this is going to help us get a smoother base. Like so. And so now when I pull this, it should sit wonderfully flat for you. And so then again, we're going to pop it under and stitch here. To here. Last side. You can stitch this from any way. I'm actually going to stitch it base up this time. That's how I would normally sew it, but it is easier to see the seam allowance from the other side. And then back stitch, pull it out, trim it off. Your outside's done. We're going to pop that aside. So now I'm going to grab my zipper pocket for the inside, and a zipper, and an inside piece. Now these are all much of a muchness, so I don't really mind where this goes. So we're going to take our zipper piece, a zipper pocket piece, sorry, and we're going to just stitch them together. And now it's a Tory pocket. Because I like Tory pockets. I can't help it. It's who I am. So we're going to grab I'm going to grab my zipper template. If you don't have a zipper template, that's fine. You can just use a ruler and draw your rectangle. I, however, am going to use my zipper template. So I'm going to do 1/2 inch from the stitch line and not from the edge. Because we need to go from where it's actually going to join. So the stitch line is the new fold over a Tory pocket. So like this. Then we're going to open it out. And the side we didn't draw on goes up the top. And then I'm going to just put it up as high as I feel comfortable. I want it there. You can put the pocket anywhere, like literally anywhere. You could have it further down, deeper into the bag. You could have it all the way lined up at the bottom and have it like a secret sneaky pocket. World your oyster. So I want mine there because I'd like to be able to easy access it. Not that this is my bag, but there's a good chance my child's going to want it, so I will then have to access it when he fills it full of stuff. So I'm just going to stitch around the rectangle and back stitch. Trim off all the tails and then get some scissors. And yes, I'm switching between all my different scissors today. I'm feeling indecisive. Now, when I did that, you'll notice I put my finger on the edge of the scissors and pushed. If your fabric's thick, and so now I just do it by default because I assume all my fabric's thick. If you've got thick fabric, sometimes that little snip can't be done from here. So by adding the extra pressure on the tip of the scissors, it's more likely going to work and go through nice and easy. So I'm triangling out these corners. So I'm cutting roughly in the center. Now you can rule a line and cut exactly in the center. I don't think it's that important if you can just eyeball what's roughly the center. Basically what you don't want to do is cut all the way against one side and not the other. So then I am going to finger press this seam here. And then I'm going to finger press this seam. And I might have to iron this. We'll find out in a minute. Then I push it through. Use my thumbs to hook out the side. This helps get like a nice crisp side. And then you can just press it again from the top. Now, even if I was using an iron, this is the way I do it. And look at that. With no iron, I have still successfully pressed that pretty quick, I think. It's all about that initial fold. If you just push the pocket through and then tried to do that, I promise finger pressing wouldn't work. I've been there, tried that. So, open up your pocket, lay your zip through the hole, lining up the edge of the zip with the edge of your pocket here, because we've cut the zip the exact size of the pocket, so it should fit in beautifully. And that's why I don't check the other end, because I've cut my zip to the right size. I'm going to get to the zipper, put my needle down, zip it past where I need to be, continue stitching, needle down, pivot, which again, I'm sure you're sick of me saying, but it'll be in your brain, you'll always do it. Stitch up the other side, get back to the zip, zip it shut, or open, depending on which way you started, and then backstitch. And then trim your tails. And then open up your zipper, because if it's not open, you won't be able to turn your bag. So now, when we pick it up, the pocket just falls perfectly into place. So I'm going to fold over the side, stitch, backstitch, go down the edge, like so, trim my tails. And then we're going to do the same to the other side. I'm going to go up. You can go down if you want to. I like the bulk of my bag out of my throat. So that's why I always stitch it this way. And then we're just going to do the same as we did for the exterior. So I'm going to take this, line it up, get to the point, needle down, pivot, again, backstitch. Now, this time, it doesn't actually matter which order I do them in. I can just grab whichever one I like. There's no right or wrong to this. Unless you've got specific parts of your bag you want on the inside. Like for the outside of the bag, if you did an embroidery, obviously you want that on the front. But the lining is usually more fluid. You can just pick whatever. I actually debated myself for a while which one of these fabrics I should use for the inside and the outside, because I think they're both fabulous. And I just so happen to have an abundance of both. Alright, so we're going to join the fourth one and create, let's say circle, it's not really a circle. I don't know really what it is, a lantern. Needle down, pivot, and I do lift my foot to do that, and that way you get nice crispy corners. Trim those tails, and then we're going to do the same thing as we did for the outside, and we're going to trim off here and here so that we get a nice curve, and there. Cutting the top releases some of the bulk, so depending on what fabric you've used, it will top stitch nicer. Cutting here creates nice points on the inside, and cutting the bottom removes the bulk from where you're going to add the base. You could probably skip the base one if you really wanted to, but it doesn't take that long, so I suggest you just do it. The less bulk in seams, the easier they are to sew though. Is that all of them? I think it is. Excellent. Push that into the bin. And then we're going to do our base again. So I'm going to do it the same way that I did. I'm going to put the top of my fabric on the same side as the pocket, because the pocket will be at the back of the bag. So when you look down, it should be the right way. Now, because it's lining, I find that lining is a lot more easy to work with, so I tend to not clip it. But I am going to still construct it in the same way. So I'm going to do one side and then the opposite. You could try and pivot around the corners. I just don't think they'd be as crisp, but you can try it that way. Don't let me tell you what you can and can't do. Just do what makes you happy. That's what I do. Works out pretty well for me so far. Okay, so I've trimmed it. I've clipped. And so now we can just stitch seam to seam. And backstitch. And trim your tails. I know it feels like we're wasting a lot of thread doing it this way. You get a crispier base. It'll be nice and square and less like, oh, that sounded bad. Chop it off, go again. Always try and have the bulk of your, like the weight of your bag on a table next to you. Because if you're not fighting the weight of stuff, you'll find sewing's a lot easier. Alright, so now I'm going to turn this one right sides out. Push out all the bits. And that is now the inside of our bag. This bag is huge. So, where the straps are is your back, obviously. So I'm going to put the zipper on the same side as the straps. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of shove it all in, like that. And then I'm going to grab the zipper pocket side and line it up with the inside. Grab some clips and start clipping. Seam to seam, and I'm going to put one in the center. Oh, hold on. Right. All clipped. So now I'm going to, with the lining sides or right sides up, right lining side up, whatever. I am going to stitch around the top. So I'm going to keep adjusting it because it is essentially a very wonky circle. It's a square, but it's also a circle. So we just need to keep adjusting it around, always stopping with your needle down so that you don't pull it out of position. And then when we go back to the start, we're going to backstitch. And really, I ran out of bobbin thread again? Wow, I did. Oh my goodness. Okay, I have refilled my bobbin. So I'm just going to go back probably 4 stitches before I run out of thread. And then sew again. Like that, and then backstitch. Pull it out, and then go trim all the tails that I have now just created. The reason I'm using so many bobbins is, for a start, the first one wasn't full when I started, and I did these straps off camera. And then also, I've had a lot of issues today, and I don't completely fill my bobbins. I always only do about 3/4 full so that I have less issues at the start. If I fill the bobbin in this particular machine, and it's probably me, but if I fill it, I have issues and I have to pull out like 3 meters anyway. So I just don't make them full. So I've got my arm in the zipper pocket, and I'm grabbing the base, and I'm going to push it down so I've got something to actually grab onto. So I'm grabbing the exterior base, and then I'm just going to pull that up, creating kind of a funnel. And then this is how I do all my bags, even off camera. So I actually squish it so I can get it as skinny as possible, grab a bit, and then once I've got the first bit out, I take the pocket and I bring it down over all the fabric. Now, this is going to be a little bit squishy because it is a big bag going through a small pocket, but it will work, I promise. So now that I've got probably half through, I'm going to squish this to make it as skinny as I can, and then I'm going to pull the zipper pocket over like that, so it's facing out like that. Because once you get that over, everything pulls through so much easier. don't know if you can see how much easier that's going already. And done. So it's that first initial bit that's difficult, but once you get your zipper pocket over the tube of fabric you've created, everything just goes way smoother. And that's how I turn bags, and I should probably turn that into a sewing candy video. Alright, so now I'm just getting my finger and I'm poking at the corners to make them sharp and pointy and glorious. So I'm starting with the base, and then I'm going to run my finger along the vinyl seam and then poke out this bit. So I'm basically scratching at the seam with my fake nails, which is why I get them. I can't grow nails to just at all. So I get fake ones so that I can do things like this. And I get them for sewing purposes because they're actually very inconvenient for horse riding. Right. Now I'm going to take my pocket, tuck in the raw edges, and I tuck like a knuckles worth. I tuck about that much because that's what works for me, the easiest. You can tuck less. You can do that and then like roll it back like that. Whatever works for you, honestly. If you've got a bag tag that you put in your bag, now's a good time to pop it in. You could have also put it in a side seam of the lining. I forgot to mention that. I also didn't put my logo on this because I'm pretty sure my child's going to want it. So I'm going to tuck the pocket back in and zip it up. So that's done. And then I'm going to take my lining and shove it inside the bag. Like this. Now, you may want to use clips for this or iron it, but you want to roll the seam so it's on the edge. Oh no, my husband's home. And then clip. So I'm going to do the rest of this off camera and I'll come back after he's gone and we'll finish up the bag. New plan. Hubby doesn't have to be at work for ages, so I've just locked him out of here and I'm going to keep sewing. So I have clipped all of the top. So now I'm going to top stitch. Now you can do this two ways. You can top stitch with the lining side up or the outside up. Now I personally prefer the outside up, so I'm just kind of going to squish it down like this. I'm also going to increase my stitch length to make it more decorative. Now, if you're new to top stitching or it scares you, do a full 1/4 of the inch or a width of your foot because it's easy to maintain. I'm going to do an 1/8 of an inch because that's what I like to do. That is my top stitching, which is exactly halfway through my foot, which is how I gauge it. And funnily enough, having a see-through foot actually makes it harder, not easier like I thought it was going to. This foot is an attempt at a Teflon alternative because the Teflon on my other feet wear off quite quick. And I say quick, but probably not. I just sew a lot. But either way, this one's like solid plastic, so I'm going to see if this is better for vinyl and such. So I'm just bringing the bag around. I'm pulling the clips off as I go, and then I stop with the needle down and then readjust the bag. Now, I didn't start in any particular spot. I just started where I felt like it. You can start at a seam, although seams get bulky, so back stitching through a seam is sometimes a bit tricky. So I personally, by default, started about 1 inch past the seam. Then I'm just going to trim off the excess like that. And so now I'm going to sew a second line. Now the second line is, I think it's pretty important, but it's to do, what we want to do is we want to create a space where our grommets are going to go. That means that it won't touch any of, like the grommet won't touch the stitching, but the stitching's going to hold the bag together so the bag isn't pulling away at the grommet. So that's why I think it's important. I'm going to sew this one from the other side up. And I'm using my foot here as a guide. So that's 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1. So I'm going to stitch 1 inch down from this line. And that's possibly actually a little bit too big, depending on the size of your grommets. No, I like that. Right, so I'm going to stitch here. And I'm going to back stitch, lock it in. Now, 3D bag, lift it up. going slowly because I don't want my lining moving. I don't want puckers, and I am going around and around. Now you can draw this line on, which I did in the original video of the crossbody version. And when I get back to the start, I backstitch. And then I've just got to pick out, this is the tail that got caught up at the start, so I've picked that out. And so now we've done all the top stitching. And I have misplaced the strap that I've cut. Oh, it's not my day. Right, so I've got my grommets, but I was going to continue stitching, but I guess I'm not doing that right now. So, I'm going to match seam to seam, and then put a clip in the center of all of these, so that, and this is going to help me mark out where I'm putting my grommets. So I'm just marking the center, which you just join seam to seam, and then that's the center. This is not where I'm putting the grommets, but this is about to help me measure the grommets. And if I do all 4 sides at once, I can measure quicker. So you want them equally apart everywhere, like that. So I'm going to grab a ruler and my friction texter. And then measure from each of the centers out. And then once I've measured it, I can take the clip off. And then I'm going to twist it. And so from the center, I'm going to measure, and then center and measure. And I'm just putting a little mark. Now, this is obviously going to be cut out, but I do still use a friction texter in case I make a mistake. If you use a real pen, you won't be able to ever get it off. So you want to be really sure that you're putting all the marks in the right spot. Okay, so that is all of my marks done. So now I need to cut the holes. Now, if you don't have a hole press cutting machine, you take your grommet and you center it over that, and then you just draw the circle inside like that. So you draw the circle on and then just cut it out with a craft knife or scissors or whatever you've got. I have a hole cutting die, which sometimes is my friend and sometimes is not so much. So we're about to find out. So you just put it over and then squish down. And for the most part, it usually cuts it all out. It's really good with vinyl. It's actually less good with fabric. I don't know why. It's a bit of a backwards thing, but there you go. So I'm going to put the next one in, center the hole up, and then just squish down. And I'm going to go around and do this for all the holes. Now again, you don't have to do it in this order. I normally, if I had all the stuff here, I would have done all the sewing and then done the grommets at the very end. But I don't know where I put the strap that's going to feed through the grommets and the little connector. So I'm going to have to go and find it. I did just have it, so I don't know how far it could have gone. Oh, my child loves these magnets. He sticks them on everything. Now this one didn't quite cut through by like 3 threads, so I'm just going to trim it off like that. So I've nearly done all the holes. You could also keep all of these and use them as confetti in balloons and stuff if you wanted to. Or if you scrapbook, you're making fun little like confetti. I don't know. So that's that done. So I've got the holes in all of the sides. So now I want to take my Fray Stepper glue, which should be in this drawer. There it is. So I use, what is it? Helmar glue. As you can see, it's quite an old bottle, but it served me well. And then I'm just going to put, now be careful because it's super, super runny. So I don't squeeze it at all. I'm just going to put it around both sides because we don't want it to fray. Then I'm going to put my grommet on the outside so it looks fabulous. And then these have like a curve. So you want when you put it on, you want the curve to be facing up. And then we're going to grab our press. Now you can get like a hammer version of this, and then you just squish it down. Bunnings sells a grommet with some gold, like a grommet kit with some gold grommets in the tool section. But obviously you need to hammer those ones. But they will fit this size. So this is the same size as the one from Bunnings. So you can buy any of the grommets in that size that you find, and the press will do them. So I'm just making sure that nothing's going to break. Put the backing on. And it's really important to put the backing on the right way. So what the backing is doing, if you put it the other way, it's not going to hold the fabric down for you the way it's meant to. So just be very conscious of that, because they're not fun to remove. Now obviously I'm going to need to iron this bag because it's got quite a lot of wrinkles, but that's because I used a poplin. So different weighted fabric will obviously turn out differently. The inside is a upholstery weight cotton. Funny enough, the inside's thicker than the outside, but the outside's got the thicker interfacing, so it all works out. All right, on, squish. We're nearly there. I'm going to turn off the camera and finish all these off camera, and then I will get the other bits and we can finish up the bag. All the grommets are now in. I've given it like a semi-iron. I'll do another one soon. So I've got my strap and I've got my little connector thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is put double-sided tape down the center. Like that. Peel off the backing. Maybe. There we go. And then fold in to the middle. That's not the middle. That's more like the middle. Right. And so now I'm actually going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edges, not the center. And I want a nice long stitch length for this. So I'm going to stitch, stitch, and then I'm going to go back through that first hole as like an alternative to back stitching. And then pull that out, back stitch at the end, like so. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side. And then trim those tails nice and close. You're going to see all of this. So now you've got this. I actually kind of like the accent color. So I'm going to find the center of this and fold both sides into the middle, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put clips on the outside. I want these to be really, really close, and I don't want them to shift. And the best way to stop things shifting is to add clips. And so now I will remove them as I need, but I'm going to start here, and I'm going to hold on to those tails like I meant to so that they don't knot up, because that's not what we want. Oh, I did not mean to do that. All right, so we're going to stitch, and then I'm going to go back through the first one. And then I'm going to go across. I'm going to make sure that that stays where it's meant to. And then needle down, pivot, pull off that last clip, and then stitch up this side. And then go across to make the rectangle complete. And so then I squish it open so that I'll be able to get stuff into it, because that's pretty important. And that's now the little carrier. So we just got this strap left. Now you can put some double-sided tape along here if you want to. I tend to not bother. And I'm also not going to stitch the short ends because it's so little that it's fine, in my opinion. But of course, if you want to, you go right ahead. So I'm going to stitch, I'm going to back stitch. And then I'm just folding it perfectly in half and stitching really close to that edge. Now, because I'm not sticking it, this obviously takes a little bit longer to sew it, but I ultimately think it's quicker. Otherwise, you'd have to do this whole perfect folding scenario with this tape and then stitch it anyway. Now, this is a Pacifica standard vinyl, so this is the fire engine one, and I like this because it's supple, so it's quite easy to bend as opposed to some of the other ones that I have. I just have them because they look pretty. They're not necessarily fun to work with though, but I do it because they look fabulous. Needle down, readjust. So I'm literally just using my fingernails again as like little pointers to get it to line up. And I'm nearly halfway. Obviously this one's bigger than the Gypsy in the small size. And you can adjust these to be longer or shorter depending on what suits you. You don't have to have them as extreme as I do. I like them to hang down a bit though. I think it looks cool. That's just me. Needle down, readjust. Needle down. Alright. When we get to the end, we're going to backstitch. And that is now complete. If you wanted to, you could stitch up the other side. But for this particular thing, I kind of like just the one-sided stitching. But you definitely could put a second line down the other bit if you wanted to. Now, threading it. I am going to start on the front panel. And I am going to go in and then out, and then in and out, around and round and round. You always start in though, going in so that your tail will be hanging out. So that's now on, and so then when you stitch it, it will close, but it won't stay that way without this little thing. So I am going to have one side through, like this, and it can be a little bit tight, but you don't want them too loose because then they don't work. So I'm going to put one side, and then the other side. My husband's tiptoeing past me, it's very adorable. Don't swear!
I didn't swear, I said biscuits.
No, you didn't. So then we're just going to thread the other side in. Now again, it's meant to be tight, but not too tight. Because if this is loose, it'll fall off and it won't hold it up. So this is like the tricky part, is getting this through. You just need to make sure it's more round than flat. If it's too flat, it won't do it. There we go. So it does still slide quite nicely, even though it feels tight, but it will hold the bag cinched up. So just to finish these off so that it can't fall off, I'm going to tie little knots in the end. And I drag them down as close to the end as I can. And that way this part can't fall off. Because you saw how, you know, time consuming it was to thread it back on. So that's what the knots are for. They're not just decorative, they're actually to stop that from coming off. And there you go, guys. Your bag is done. Or your backpack, sorry, I should say. It's still a bag, but whatever. So there we go. I hope that was helpful. And please come show me if you make one. All right, bye-bye.